Is Andrew Lulham. He is the consultant, strength and conditioning coach, and a track and field coach. And our key topic for today's chat will be all about maximising athlete development and a deep dive into specifically sprinting, jumping, and lifting. So whether you're an athlete yourself, parent of a developing athlete, or of course high performance staff, make sure to get the notepad out. And if you're listening in live, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, feel free to send in some questions our way, and no doubt we'll find some time later in the show. But welcome, Andrew. Looking forward to our chat, mate. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jack. Appreciate it. This is a first for me. I haven't done a podcast before. I've done a few conferences and presentations around the place, but I haven't done a podcast. So, yeah, everything's new.
Very good. Yeah, didn't know that. Very grateful to have you for your first debut podcast, mate. But
Yeah.
For those that aren't aware of your background, do you mind providing a background, I guess, how you got into the industry, your passion for it, and work experience you've done along the way?
Yeah, look, I got into strength and conditioning because my football coach back in the day said, "You're too small." Yeah, that was a rugby coach, and he said, and he actually paid for me to go and see a strength and conditioning coach, a guy named by the name of Ian King, who used to be the executive director for the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. He's actually Susan Carroll's son-in-law, but he sort of stepped away from the ASCA over the time. But he was the Brisbane Lions, Queensland Reds strength and conditioning coach here in Queensland, and so I went and saw him and started getting some paying for these programs, which were just got me into lifting, I suppose, and trying to get bigger for rugby. And it was costing a bit of money, and I'd go in there, and I got right into it. And got into lifting, and then going down to the field, towing tires behind me as sleds, and borrowed some hurdles from my old school and hurdle hops, hurdle jumps, etc. And then it sort of went from that I was studying a maths degree at university, and didn't. Yeah, I mean, I fell into a maths degree because I was good at maths at school and really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I did that, and then all of a sudden I was sitting there in Ian's office and waiting for him while I think he was training some Reds players at the time, and I ended up stumbling across these ASCA magazines that I still remember the day Greg Wilson had a bench press article in it, and Dan Baker had an article, and I was just probably enthralled with periodization strategies, and Greg Wilson had one about bench pressing and pausing for reps and stretch shortening cycle and all that sort of stuff. So I just started reading all about it, and then I wanted to I started going, okay, well, what am I doing with this maths degree? And I ended up taking a couple of electives at QUT in human movements, and then ended up transferring over to do human movement studies at the University of Queensland, where I ended up meeting Dan Baker, the great Dan Baker at the UQ Powerlifting Weightlifting Club. And probably from that, never really looked back. When it comes to strength conditioning, was like all of us back in the day, we worked a lot of hours trying to. There weren't many jobs back then. 20, 30 years ago, like 25 years ago, in Brisbane, there was probably 4 or 5 in the whole of Brisbane. Like there was one at the Broncos, Dan had that. There was one at the Reds. I think Lachlan Penfold or Damien Medinus had that. And Lachlan was at the Lions with Scott Murphy, and so there weren't many jobs, and you just sort of really had to grind away working with a Queensland Cup rugby league team. And Dan got me the opportunity to work at North's Rugby League for a couple of years, which is great. Met some great players. I worked with Dan for a year, before that, at the Broncos. So that was great. They won the premiership that year in '98, and then went on to did 2 years at the North Rugby League, which it's funny because I found there's quite a few people that have ended up working at North Devils over the years. I think Michael Speranz has worked there. David Ballard, who's at the Broncos. Both of those boys worked there at different times. Grant Cole just finished working there last year. So there's been quite a few different people that have ended up going through that place at the Devils, and then I tried to find my feet again and did the same thing at East Rugby League. Got a shot working with a coach there, Mick Booth, and which was great. We didn't quite win the grand final, lost it, and then we had to play a replay the week after. And we drew, and then had to play a replay the week after, and didn't quite get the chocolates that day. But and there's been other people like Jacob Staines that's worked there as well, and East Tigers on the last weekend won the trophy up here. Well, I think it's called the Intrust Cup now, but won it for the first time. So it's all long days and back then, and then I ended up running into a guy named Kelvin Giles. Had a job interview with him. Here I'm actually doing the interview at the QAS, Queensland Academy of Sport, today in a meeting room. But ran into him and had an interview and didn't get the job. But back in the day, I didn't, those sort of meetings, really, if you can make a good impression, can really help out. And the next time Kelvin had a job come up, I was one of the first people he called, and I ended up getting a bit of a breakthrough working at the QAS under Kelvin, which was so fortunate to work with someone like him as well. And then the people that had worked there before, and then the people around me, I had people like Anthony Georgie and Michael Davies over at the Milwaukee Bucks, and Kieran Young. It was such a Scott Dickinson down at, I think you've got him on tomorrow. Scotty Dickinson was working here. Suki Hobson was working here. So there was a lot of great S&Cs coming through the ranks at the time. It was sort of a good time to be getting into strength conditioning, because it was just growing, multiplying as we spoke. Salaries were going up, and employment was going up as well in the industry. It was great.
Awesome. Yeah, some great, I guess, influencers or mentors, if you like, along the way. Who would, I guess, be your strongest influences from a philosophy point of view, do you feel?
Look, I suppose I probably got three. Three in the strength conditioning. I'd probably go Dan Baker, Kelvin Giles, and Anthony Georgie probably influenced me the most. Strength conditioning wise, and then in the track and field, I've got Gary Bourne, probably my biggest influence at the moment. That's Vald and all the Nordic hamstring curls, and that's Matt Bourne's dad.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, and anyway, I think Dan, because I went to the powerlifting club and worked with Dan, trained under him for quite a few years, and did a year of working with him at the Broncos, and then obviously working with Kelvin here at the QAS as well, with all his LTAD stuff that he was developing at the time, and his movement dynamics. And then I'll probably still remember the day, I think Anthony had, Kelvin had left and Anthony was the boss. And I remember the day he said, "Oh, can I have a look at your program?" And I gave it to him, and he ripped it shreds, sort of thing, and said, "Wake up, look at, have you thought about this, and this?" So yeah, back in the day, you sort of cop it on the chin and, start to realize, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that, hadn't thought of this. So that was, those sort of memories stay with you as well, those learning points of your career.
100%. And what about highlights, mate? Like moments of your career that you're proud
of? There's so many. Strength conditioning wise, I worked with the AEST diving squad back in 2004, and I think that's the best the Australian diving team's ever done at the Olympic Games. I can't remember how many medals now. It's Chantal Newbury won a gold. She won she got a silver in the bronze in the synchro springboard. Matt Helm got a silver, and Robert Newbury and Steve Barnett got a bronze as well. I think it was 4 medals, so I think that was second-ranked nation in the world. Obviously, the 4 years later, I wasn't directly working with Matt Mitchum, but I'd done a lot of work with him prior, and he obviously went on to win gold in 2008, and I think they got 2 medals then. And then I didn't work with AEST diving after 2008 when I went to Port Adelaide. So actually, the other person probably had a bit of a good influence on me was back in the day was Cameron Falloon at Port Adelaide. He's now a partner or founder, a partner of BFT in Melbourne. So he went on to bigger and better things in his career. But yeah, he was also a big fan. I think a big influence on me in the professional sport area as well.
Yeah. There's for those that are interested, there is a fair few in those that you work closely with that we have had on the podcast, big names in the industry. So for those that want to find out more information about those guys, Cameron Falloon's been on, Scott Dickinson, like you said, Dan Baker, Kelvin Giles. Big people that have really helped progress and move the industry forward. It goes to show how close knit the industry is. I reckon Kelvin Giles and Dan Baker will be up there with the most popular people mentioned in terms of great people like yourself that have worked with them. What about most challenging moments of your career? Areas that you've sort of faced and that you learnt from, I guess.
I suppose the challenging times come from when you either you haven't explained yourself, I suppose, in the way you would have liked to, or someone can't understand what you've tried to portray, you're not getting your message across. So I think that can be the hard part, and being able to understand where they're coming from. So I think they're the ones that they can come down. They can not hurt you a bit, but you really got to think about how you're getting that message across to that person, and trying to find a solution and find what they really want to hear sometimes, and what if not necessarily you don't want to give them just what they want to hear, but you've got to find what will make them listen. So they're some of those hard ones. And sometimes you get some footballing coaches or professional coaches or any coach, and they've got a different way of thinking of things, and they're set in their ways. So you've got to really be adaptable, I suppose, to the way you can get your message across. They're the challenges, I think.
That's a great point. It's we can have all the information in the world, but if we don't know how to engage the athlete in front of us and be able to speak their language, and ultimately it's what they've grasped from it to be able to influence their behaviour, then there's really you're not going to make a great impact, are you, as a coach?
No, yeah, and I think it's a lot harder not harder, but you really got to start to, as the older you get as a strength and conditioning coach, the more you've got to become adaptable to even things like this, like podcasts and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff, because this is what the athletes look at. So you've got to be willing to communicate and engage, and those sorts of things. Back in the day when we had the QIS, there was like a rule of no phones in the gym, and that's just the way it is. But then, even last week, I was talking to Glenn Workman down at Surfing Australia, and they've got like 96% of engagement of the surfers around Australia that are engaged in the Surfing Australia program, and he was saying that that's because phones are allowed in the gym, and they promote the Instagram videos of their athletes in the gym, and that they've had to do that to get engagement from the surfers around Australia. So if they see surfers doing the exercises, then the surfers want to do it. The up and coming surfers. So it starts to snowball that way. So I suppose that those sort of things, the old school way of doing things is you have to sort of adapt and change to that as you go on in your career.
Yeah, 100%. Well said, mate.
I mean, I don't know. How does it work at a Melbourne footy club? Do you have phones in the gym at a footy club? No?
No phones, unless we're in a off-site gym, because we use
Yeah.
TeamBuilder, which is an app, and sometimes the iPads that we give the athletes don't connect to Wi-Fi, whatever reason, then phones might sneak their way in. If there's a big sporting world event on, like the Super Bowl, we might allow a little bit of leeway there, just to I guess give a bit back, like you said, be adaptable. But 95% of the time, you don't want them distracted on their phones. And we're lucky enough to, I guess, to have media team. So from a engagement with the fans, the media team come in from time to time and film the guys. So
it's sort of a bit of a horses for courses and those sort of different situations, isn't it?
100%. Depending on your environment and I guess your culture. Moving over to the key topic that you chose, mate, do you mind providing sort of a brief overview on why you sort of selected sprinting, jumping and lifting as something that you value, I guess?
Look, I suppose, I worked as probably came from a strength background, working with Dan Baker back in the days, and I ran 800s at school, so knew a bit about conditioning, and you go through that phase, and then you start to go, geez, do I really know what I'm talking about when I'm sprinting? And I tried to. I really found that was. I felt that you could read about it, and I could read articles and read textbooks, and this is what you're meant to do. But for me, it was probably more about getting out there and coaching it, and coaching sprinting all the time. And I tapped on the Matt Bourne's dad, Gary, who's a long jump coach, probably one of the most successful in the world. He was right at my doorstep. Like literally, he was teaching at a school, Sunnybank High, which is like probably not 3 kilometers away from where I am right now, and he taught there, for 20, 30 years, and was coming up to the track here to coach, and I didn't realize, just how smart and valuable and what a brain he had about sprinting and jumping. So I got, and I'd even worked here at the QAS for 5 years before I went to Port Adelaide, and then came back and then realised, how smart he was, and what valuable resource he had there when it came to sprinting. And I end up just basically just standing side by side with him for many years, just learning and listening and videoing and seeing what he's looking for and hearing what he's looking for. And I think I found that for me, that was something that just really made a difference in me, and it really influenced the way I coach now. And sprinting off, we all know how to squat. We all know, okay, we're going to push our knees out, we're going to push our hips back, keep our chest up, etc., all those sorts of things. But I think when it comes to sprinting, I've really found that you've got to really take the athletes, take the coaches back, and really start from scratch with the fundamentals there. So, and that's what I've really enjoyed. I ran a course up here in Brisbane at the start of the year with a few strength and conditioning coaches, and just teaching them, the why behind why you do this drill, why you do that drill. So, they really enjoyed it. And I'll run another one again soon, but when I can find the time, that's always the hardest part. But those sorts of things really tap into me, and then the jumping side of stuff, just flowed on from that. the technical side of things, and then lifting is just it's all part of it. As an elite sprinter, elite long jumper, you spend you still spend a 30 a week doing lifting. If you have 6 training sessions, 2 of them are going to be heavy lifting. 2 of them are fast sprinting, and 2 of them are jumping. So you're going to be it's all part of that connection there.
You mentioned the impact sort of that Gary had early on in your coaching days. What was sort of some key takeaways that you've now transferred into your coaching that you're now teaching S&Cs as well as developing athletes?
Well, I think the initial part for me was working out all the key positions that you can find are all around the world. Like I think there's an article from back in, I think it's 1988 by Ralph Mann that shows you some of the key positions and where your knee needs to be on touchdown and swing knee and stance knee and all those sorts of different positions. And then you'll see, the kinograms that Altus and all that sort of do. That's really good. But then it's about, well, how do you get the kids, or how do you get the athletes into those positions? So that's the hard part. So it's all right to know what they need to look like, but it's then getting them to be able to do that. That's for me, that's what coaching is about, is being able to make those changes. And you get the kids that can come along and do one session with you, and you go, beautiful, they're done. I don't need to see you again. You know what to do, and they just can pick it up straight away. And then you got the kid that can take 2 years for them to realise what they're doing. So that's for me, that's what I thrive on, is trying to get them to make change, but embed it in their system, their neural system, that they don't have to think about it. For me, it's sprinting's about, you want someone to sprint, but you want them to be able to do it without having to think. The last thing I think you want is Katoni Staggs on the wing for the Broncos this week, catching the ball and then intercepting the ball and then having to think about how to run. You just want him to run and not think. So they're the sort of things that I like to embed in my athletes, and that's the sort of thing we try to do. Like, if you get someone at Olympic Games, they're out on the biggest stadium of their life, biggest arena, people everywhere, the crowd's going nuts. They can't be thinking about those little tiny things, because they just need to be able to run and jump. So they're the sort of what I'm trying to instill in my athletes.
And is that that coaching philosophy, is that something that maybe at the start, let's say you're working with an athlete in the off season, you're highly detailed and you are really specific, and then as they get close to competing, you're now more just letting them go, and perhaps more constraint-based coaching that we hear.
Yeah, look, it's up here in Queensland. Yet we and probably all around Australia, when you work with in athletics, it's such a crappy season, because you go from a school season, which is usually June, July to October, and then you go basically start into a club season, which starts from October through to April. So they never really get an off season. So you're always having to make this decision with your kids of, when do you stop? When do you just let them run? Even if they're going to run like shit, they're going to be poor technically, but at the same time, if they show up to the race on the weekend and get punished by their competitors, they may not come back. And if they keep getting beaten up, they're not going to come back. So it's a real fine line as a coach, is when do you stop? When do you get let that go for a bit? And I'm never sure if I'm getting that part right. But in training, I'll be trying to do a lot of the stuff in Renshaw's, the constraint-based stuff, just throwing that stuff in all the time, and without me having to say it, and just let them do it, and then not thinking about it. That's probably the great part of the constraint-based learning. But then at the same time, you've got to, if they're not picking it up, if they go for that constraint-based drill and then they go away and they just go back to their self, then you've got to talk them through at a time. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that I think, you always, as a coach, you're always trying to work out what's going to be best, what's worst for that athlete at the time. I suppose that's where you got the science side of it, but you've got the art side of it as well. What's best for the athlete at that point in time of their life, and what's going to keep them coming back, what's going to motivate them, what's going to demotivate them, etc.
Yeah, that makes sense. On the topic of sprinting, Arun from LinkedIn just sent in a question. Does speed in sprinting, is it based on genetics, do you think, or can a coach help an athlete run faster?
A coach can definitely help an athlete run faster. How fast? How high is that ceiling? I'm not sure, but you can definitely make an athlete run faster by some good technical changes. It just, like, you can get a kid to run fast and they'll run fast just by training and training poorly technically. But how fast they'll get, there'll be more of a limitation. They'll probably end up with more injuries, more hamstring injuries if they're running technically poor. So therefore, they probably won't get, they'll end up half time injured. So running technically better, they're going to be able to get consistency in their training for longer, and their body will adapt to the neuromuscular adaptations as well from that. So yeah, you can definitely run faster. How fast is going to be limited by their genetics, I suppose. So if I'm never, like someone like a Trey Williams, who was, just over 5 foot, he squeezed every little bit of his genetic capacity out of himself by running 10:08, I think he did, for the 100 meters a few years ago. But most exceptions, not many just over 5 foot athletes around the world that can run that fast. But at the same time, he had, I think it's not a world record, but I think it's known in the sprinting world that he's got one of the highest stride frequencies ever recorded. I think it was like something like 5.3 strides per second, sort of thing.
Yeah, wow.
That was you probably had him on your podcast too, was Angus Ross from New Zealand. No. Have you had him? No, I think he's been on a couple of different podcasts around the world. You probably get him on. He's from New Zealand. He was a big influence back in the day. He used to train out of the UQ Powerlifting Weightlifting Club with Dan Baker and myself.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I'll have to reach out. With working with team-based athletes, and they've come to you to want to improve their acceleration, compared to a track and field 100-meter sprinter, you're looking for different shapes because they're sort of more upright naturally when they've got a ball in play, or do you think the biomechanics sort of transfer over to, obviously it's a controversial topic, but what's your thoughts on it?
Look, I think there's a lot of different things about there. I suppose you've got to look at. A team sport athlete they're going to be accelerating from just different positions all the time, upright, the ground, all sorts. So I suppose for me, you're going to be looking at acceleration from all those different positions. From laying on the ground, beach starts, up and turn, kneeling, those sorts of things. Accelerating from a jog, accelerating from a backward jog, those sorts of things. So everything's going to change a lot. But projection's still going to be the thing. You've got to still be able to project yourself, as far forward as fast as you can. So getting those angles right are going to be important. The hardest part, I think, for the team sport athletes is they need to accelerate, but then they need to make a decision. So that's the hard part. If it's all right to accelerate if they've got they're in play in rugby league and they've got to push off hard for 10 meters, that's great. But if it's up close and then you have to push hard to accelerate, they also the decision making becomes so much quicker. So they don't have the time. So I think those positions can change a lot. So those sorts of things can influence a lot. I think the whole the general principles of acceleration training, like heavy sleds and all that sort of stuff, is still very applicable to the team sport athletes as much as it is to a track and field athlete, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you think as S&Cs, if you're getting all those different starting positions in a sense with the sport, maybe with small-sided games and football training, do you focus more on the projection, more controlled sort of stuff, improving their rate of force development?
I think you can definitely make that argument. I think as well. Like that's the real hard part. Like if they're getting all that stuff in their game-based training, then do you need to? I suppose.
Hey, Jack.
Andrew.
I don't know what happened there.
All good. I'll edit that section bit out.
My phone has just died at something. I'm not sure. I thought it was all brand new. Sorry.
All good. No stress. We'll just continue it on. What were we talking about?
Game-based agility training.
Excellent. Yeah.
Acceleration. Look, I suppose for me, I think, look, it's really important how much gets done in the game base, but I think there is a lot to still do with the projection side of things, with the and how you teach that, how you lift the knees, how you do all those sorts of things. So I think that's really important. And then how you attack the ground. But there's always that. There's going to be something's going to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision at some point. And you realise that every situation, in a game-based sport, it's chaotic. So you've got to train for the chaos, I suppose. So even though you might have a model that you think will work, at different times it might not. And so you've got to come up with different solutions for that. So I think it's a real tough one. I'm not sure if there's a real correct answer for it.
Yeah. I guess it depends on where you're at, aren't you, with your
Yeah.
athletes and your area of focus. You mentioned attacking the ground, raising the knees. What are some sort of common mistakes that you see from field team-based athletes? That you think can transfer to those listening. Some common mistakes and some, I guess, some tips to focus on when you're improving your acceleration, your sprinting technique.
Yeah, look, I think I always remember back in the day, it was one of the key fundamental things they used to say was short steps on your sprinting, quick steps, and whereas now it's probably more explode on your first step and drive with that first knee and get it up to 90 degrees of your torso and staying in nice angles. So that those things I find are key. If you can get that work on that, is going to be really crucial to your outcomes when it comes to acceleration.
And does that, from a vertical point of view, when sprinting, what are some key areas that that you commonly see as common mistakes and how to correct them?
I think maximum velocity, verticals, that vertical sprinting, in a vertical position, you're going to see trail leg, swing leg behind the knee on touchdown. That's probably the key and the easiest thing to see. If you can see that, they're the things you got to try to fix up. Because if you can fix that up, it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. Which was first? So there's two sides. The way I like to attack that is, they've got to learn to pick up. So pick the foot up and pick it up quickly and aggressively off the ground, and don't delay it. And then to rapidly accelerate the knee up high to at least to a 90 degree position, or a horizontal position, and that gives them the room to hit the ground then. So just moving from the old traditional sort of backside mechanics into a bit more of a front side mechanics, moving that ellipse forward, and giving the athlete then the ability, the room to strike the ground. So I think there's plenty of different analogies I've heard over the years. I've heard hammers. If you've got a hammer, you want to hit it from above. I always like if you've got a basketball and you want to bounce it as high as you can, you don't start 10 centimeters from the ground. You start as high as you possibly can to get the ball to bounce as high as you can. So I think of that as a real easy one analogy. So you want that you want a reaction out of the ground, and from that you needed to be at as high as you possibly can. So if your knees is up at 90 degrees, you're higher than at 20, 30 degrees below horizontal. So they're the sort of things I'm thinking about when it comes to max velocity sprinting.
And you mentioned using the camera. I think you said Gary Bourne was using the camera a fair bit for feedback, and something you like to use. How often would you be giving in a given session? Like, how many reps would you like? Is there a percentage, or is it just depend on where the athlete's at with their development from a technical point of view?
Well, I suppose for me, the camera comes in a lot earlier in their development, so they can see what to do. Like I've recently had a Gary used to have it, but a TV on a stand and bring it out to the track. And what I've really noticed is what's good is I would have my iPad hooked up to it, or use a sideline scout, and they get to. I can show the athlete what they're doing, but what's great is when you get 4 athletes to come over and they end up watching the one person and what they're doing, and they get to hear what I'm saying about that one athlete. And then all of a sudden, the other 3 athletes are starting to listen to what I've said to them, and then those sort of images are getting put into their head, and so they start to pick it up. unconsciously, I'm not even talking to that person, but they start to pick up other cues and things like that maybe they need to think about. So that's been really helpful. I also find that obviously the younger the athlete, they don't know what they're doing, so they don't know the positions they're in and what to do. So one, it's great if you've got a good role model in your group, and sometimes you don't. So that can be hard. But then to being able to show them different videos of other athletes that can do it, and if I've got a young group, I'll show them a video of someone that can do it from my older, more senior group, and show them that, and then they can start to see it. So that I like to use that early. And what I'm big on with my video is really not trying to show them what they've done wrong. So if I get a video and I'm like, I've videoed them, all right, let's have a look at it. And part of their stride cycle, they might have one knee picks up nicely, foot's in dorsiflexion, everything's great. And then I know that the next stride, they do the opposite on the other leg. I'll show them the good part on the right leg. What they did on their left leg, I won't show them. So they know that they're not going to see the bad stuff, because I just have this overriding feeling if they keep seeing the bad stuff all the time in their head, they're going to keep thinking about the bad stuff. If I say to you, Jack, I don't want you to think about lemons, what do you think about?
Oranges.
Oranges. All
right.
You're going to think about it. So I don't want them to walk away from me having a conversation with them at a training session, show them a video and show them bad stuff, because then they go walking away and they're just thinking about the bad stuff.
Yeah.
When I want them to be walking away over to their seat in between the reps, grab their drink and think about the good stuff they can do, and think about, I can do this, I can do that better, or they've seen someone else do it. In athletics, it's a real funny thing, because you see whole groups of squads at different all around the track, and you'll see each squad all runs very similar to themselves. So if I've got Joe Bloggs over in that corner, that squad all basically runs very similar to each other. Jimmy Dillon up the other end, that squad all run similar. They're getting the same cues from the same coach, telling them to do the same thing, and then they're watching people from their same group who they probably see as role models, and they follow them, they look at them, and then they do what they do. And so you get this, it just imparts upon them, subconsciously. So it takes a big thing to, if you know the technical model you want, you can start to instill it within a group, and it can come along quickly. And I think at first I thought it was hard, but it comes along a lot quicker as the years go on. Or maybe it's just me. You just get more experienced about know what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, that's great. That it makes a lot of sense. I guess any coach listening to that really paint a clear picture of what success looks like for the athlete. Not only so they've got that front of mind, but also I guess you're really boosting their confidence and building a positive reinforcement with the camera. Where if you're constantly giving them negative feedback, they're probably not going to be too happy when the camera comes out the next time and stiffen up.
It's like the old, I always remember one of the first things I learned from Dan Baker when I did I think it was my level 1 or level 2 about feedback, and it was about CRC or coach commend, recommend, commend. And when someone's in the gym, they do a squat, commend them on what they did well, and recommend what they need to do, and then commend what they did, what they can still do, or what they've done. And I was in a coaching course, and someone said to me, "Oh, that's the old shit sandwich." And I sort of had to disagree with this person, because they said that, and I understand what they were trying to say is, people, you commend what you do, and then you tell them what the shit part of the session of the thing was, and then you tell them what to do. And I'm like, well, that's not actually what I try to do. I don't try and give them a shit sandwich. I don't want to tell them what they did wrong. I want to tell them what they need to do. Okay. So that's a big thing for me in the coaching. I think my wife's a teacher, and she's a head of pedagogy, and she follows this guy by the name of John Hattie. He's from down in Melbourne, and he's he's a professor. And I actually snuck into her conference down in Melbourne at the start of the year, and I got to meet him. And one of the key things he talks about when you're teaching kids in a classroom is, 99 out of 100 things you can make a change in a kid's learning. All right. So, resources, if they've got an iPad, if they've got pencils, if they've got that. But one of the key things was it's all about feedback. So if you can give them the feedback and the right feedback at the right time, that's what helps the kids learn. And then the other part to it is the feedback that you give them, have they actually understood what you've said? So I could tell you, Jack, I want you to lift your knees up, okay, and get them up to horizontal. And I think I've done my job because I've told you that. But really, your perception of horizontal might be here in your mind, but when you go to do it, your knees are only coming to here. So there's a gap there in what your perception is and what your body can do. And that's the hard part for the coach, is to be able to realize that and then be able to come in with different cues for you and to give you more feedback and better feedback. And it's not just then bring them up to 90 degrees. For me, the feedback might be is to exaggerate the feedback. So bring your knees up to your chest, and that might be the cue that you need. And your knees might only come up to horizontal now, but that might be what needs to work for you. So finding those simple cues and things that can get a response that you're after for the technical side of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And moving over to jumping, what are your favourite, I guess, ways of programming jumping? Does it happen at the start of the session after a warm up? Is it after running sessions? Talk us through where jumping comes into your program, and also some of your favourite drills to do for athletes who want to improve their explosive power.
Look, I like to have it at the start of the session. If I remember being at Port Adelaide back in 09, 10, and that was the ruckmans. The ruckmans wanted to get jump higher. Some of the key backmen they wanted to jump higher, and that was for me. That was at the start of the strength sessions, and we go out into the court and we do some other jumping drills. Just whether it was vertical jump drills, single leg takeoffs, double leg takeoffs, all that sort of stuff. Weighted vests, etc. So I always like to do it at the start before the lifting. I mean, and I know that there's many different ways of skinning a cat, and there could be different times where you might get them to squat and then go do the jumping and get a potentiation effect, etc. But I suppose for me, I've always tried to work on the skill itself of jumping, and then but the sorts of things like the potentiation. Once I know that they're at their limit or close to their limit or their ceiling, then I like to add in those sorts of tools, etc.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what about for those that want to improve? You mentioned the vertical jump for the key position players. When you're at Port Adelaide, did you do jumping or plyometrics for smaller, like speed forwards, midfielders, or did you more focus on acceleration, agility? and
No,
strength?
we did the same actually. We used to go. It was actually I suppose my first season down there. I was new to AFL. Like I was a rugby league. I played. I was entrenched in rugby league up here, and got a great opportunity to go down there and work in AFL, which was great because expanded my horizons greatly. And then I got the opportunity probably the second season to really branch out and work on what I thought we could have a better effect. Unfortunately, we had a crappier season the second season, but there was a lot of different things that came into that. But in the preseason, we used to do we used to basically go into at the time we had in the preseason we had some split days. We had lower body days, and on the lower body split days, we'd actually start out on the track, and we might do heavy sled work. We might do hurdle hops. We'd start teaching them plyometrics and those sorts of things, and then we'd head into the gym and do our heavy lifting stuff. And that was, like what it's like with a footy team. You've got so many players. We were probably back then. We were probably under resourced. We had two. There was me and the head of performance, and so that's how it worked because we didn't have the numbers at the time to be able to go. Okay, we're going to go in the gym, then back out on the track, back in the gym, and then the next group comes in, sort of thing. So that's just sort of the way it worked for us at the time. But look, that I definitely tried to do that with the players, and that those sort of things did vary for the different positions as well.
And with strength and power training, your traditional strength and power training with external load, have you or do you take into account any sort of negative adaptations for those that want to improve speed? Like, is there do you focus more on the explosive running based work if they're have got good body mass and they've got a good level of strength? Do you sort of strip the volume back in the weights room, or do you still feel like you need to keep up a good exposure to strength and power training for those athletes that are strong?
I definitely think the strength and power side of things still have to be the traditional strength power stuff needs to be, fully loaded and heavy, etc. But the volume of work can definitely decrease. So, if I think the athletes at a maximum, body mass that they need to be at, I definitely won't be pushing, in the preseason reps of 8s or 10s or trying to get them strong again. They're bigger and looking for hypertrophy effect. I'm definitely going to keep them, 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s, probably at the lower range there, 4s and 3s, and just lifting heavy, but the volume stripped back out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For me, anyway. Look, obviously, people have got different ways of doing things, but that's probably a bit more way I'd look at it.
Yeah. And what would be your favourite sort of compound lifts for upper body, lower body?
Yeah. I suppose you just can't go past, the traditional, if you've got the time and the opportunity to teach, cleans, if you can't teach cleans, clean pulls. If you squats are great, step ups are great. I always like to do deadlifts. You're going to go to the trap bar deadlifts these days, especially now that you've got them. We didn't even have them back in the day. Feel old now. But that those sorts of things. Any sort of high force is just going to make a huge impact. And you just can't ignore that these days. That it's so. If you've got one group that's going to be lifting, you got a whole Melbourne Football Club that lifts heavy, and then you go play another footy club that's not going to lift heavy. I dare say the footy club that lifts heavy is going to win out, as long as they're doing the same amount of conditioning. As long as they're not so big that their conditioning has a negative effect. So it's such a juggle there with your footballers, and that's why there's so many S&Cs working in the industry these days. You've got to be right on your game, and every player that's going to be on your list, and 30, 35 players that can run around for a AFL first team in a year, you need to be right on the money there.
100%, 100%. Well, we've covered a fair amount of detail around sprinting, acceleration, change of direction, obviously jumping, and then strength training. Is there anything before we start to wrap it up, Andrew, that you'd like to touch on that we haven't discussed so far on the topic of athlete development?
No, not really. I suppose the one thing I would like to say thanks to is that probably if I can, is you asked me about some of the influences that I've had on me over the years. But I think the greatest thing about the industry of strength and conditioning is you're just learning off your peers all the time. So I like to thank them. There's people. I've got a list of people I could say thank you to that have had such an influence on me over the years, working here at the QAS when I was here, working at the track, working at Broncos. Just not just the strength and conditioning coaches, but coaches as well. They've made such a big influence on how how I've been moulded over the years. That they're probably the ones that go unnoticed, but they're the ones that also play such a role in how we all get shaped and how we get shaped as a strength and conditioning coach and as a person. So
100%. And you mentioned as well, like getting different experiences, like moving from rugby to AFL for S&Cs that perhaps have just worked in one sport. How did that come about, that opportunity to work to cross codes? And in hindsight, was it a good thing for your career? Was it not a good thing? Like, talk us through that.
Look, it was an amazing thing for me to work in different sports. The only reason I moved back to Brisbane from Port Adelaide was the weather. It wasn't the footy club. It wasn't football. It wasn't AFL. It was just born and bred in Queensland. I love the winter up here. It's beautiful. So that working in AFL was just such a big eye opener. Full time, and we didn't have a big budget at the time. But you really worked hard for everything you did, and you're trying to, probably back then it was a bit of a Port Adelaide thing. You're a bit of an underdog, so you're doing everything you can to try and win. And that was sort of born and bred within the club there. So you had to do that. So that was you just worked hard at not just the details, but about trying to get better as yourself to be the better S&C. And then working across all the footy codes, working at a rugby league, rugby union, football, diving, hockey. I couldn't recommend it more for a young up and coming strength and conditioning coach to get such a wide array of different sports to work with. It really just opens your eyes up to some of the different issues you have, the injuries that you have, etc. So I definitely wouldn't look back about working with all those different sports.
Yeah. Well said, mate. Moving on to the sort of personal side, have you got pet peeves, anything that fires you up about the industry?
Pet peeves. Well, I suppose for me, I just like to see things done really well. And if we're going to put a video up, or we're going to start talking about drills or plyometrics or those sorts of things, I want to see it done well and have a real good strong knowledge in that. But other than that, I don't really have a pet peeve about the industry or anything like that. It's such a great you work in strength and conditioning. It's day in paradise, really. What else can you do? You love what you're doing. If you're not, I don't think I'd do a job that I don't like. That's the hard part. If someone told me I was going to work in an office in sports administration, then I'd be pulling my hair out. So working in strength and conditioning and athletics and consulting and all those areas is that's you get out of bed, ready to go.
Yeah. What about favorite way to spend a day off?
I'm probably going to say this because my wife won't hear this because she probably won't listen to me. But a day at the track. But other than that,
This is
probably
racetrack, like running.
a day at the beach. Yeah, go for it. Get up, have a coffee, go for a run, go to the beach, go home. It's usually what we do on our holidays. Actually, is we have a week away. Usually, we used to go away the week before Christmas, and we get up, go for a run, have a coffee, go for a swim, have a nap, watch some EPL football replays, and go for a walk on the beach. That's a great day.
A good day. And we're recording this live in late September 2023. What's on the horizon for the rest of the year, mate? What are you excited about?
I'm excited about 2024, to tell you the truth. Paris 2024. So I am going away for a big trip to Europe with the family in December. My daughter finishes year 12, so we got a big family trip to Europe, going skiing. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the next year, Paris 2024. So yeah, looking forward to see if I can get a couple of athletes on that team, and then on a World Junior team as well next year. So that'd be great.
Yeah, so run us through your current role with the consultancy work. Is that athletes reaching out to you? Are you working with organisations?
Yeah, I've got yeah, it's a funny one with athletics. So the athletes sort of reach out to you. It's sort of hand over from some of Gary's athletes at the moment. And so I've got a couple of them. I've got a couple of younger kids that might make a World Junior team next year. So yeah, that they're all, it's going to be, could be a really exciting year next year. Fingers crossed. We hit all our targets, and no one gets a black cat to walk in front of them or anything like that.
No doubt. They'll perform well. They're lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have you for the last hour, Andrew. Really appreciate your time and sharing with us not only your experiences, but also your knowledge and those that you've worked with along the way, and specifically some practical takeaways for both athletes and coaches on jumping, sprinting, and lifting. For those that have follow-up questions, where's the best place to get in contact, mate?
Probably email's the best, andrewlulham@gmail.com. That's probably the best way. I am on LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff, but yeah, probably email. I'm happy to answer anything. That'd be great.
Yep, I'll add the links into the show notes for those that might be driving, listening to the recording. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in live. Thank you, Aaron, for your question. And our next live interview is with James Hanish. That'll be 3 p.m. Australian Standard Time, Thursday, the 5th of October. So I look forward to seeing you guys then. Thanks.
Great.